we are highly focused on technology. In fact, we think technology is our spine, and we'll be doubling down on technology every year because as we have to keep up the pace with the rapid technology which is evolving. As we speak, every 1 week the technology is getting evolved because of the agentic AI and other systems which are coming, the revolutions that is going on.
Hello and a warm welcome to a very special podcast, Unusual Suspects. I'm your host, Gaurav Chaudhary. This is a series about unraveling stories of entrepreneurs, investors, and professionals who are disruptors, yet not in your face. Their disruptions have consistently delivered on the purpose and the mission they've embarked on. Their values are as strong as their mission. While they're ruthless in pursuing their ambition, they don't stray from being leaders who are not just admired for the vision and relentless pursuit, but also for how they are building an ecosystem of believers who consistently push the boundaries. In each episode, I speak to one such leader, talking to her or him or them about the business's lives, inspirations, interests, challenges, pivot moments and turning points, successes, failures, agonies and ecstasies, and of course, the little joys of professionals, life, businesses, and everything else in between. It is as much about the personal life stories and professional journeys as about the entrepreneurial and also sometimes philanthropic journeys. Unusual Suspect streams on Earshot.in, Spotify.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, MoneyControl.com, and a host of other podcast streaming platforms and directories. For this episode, I am delighted to have Chirag Mehta, founder, Arbour Investments, an investment firm focused on the real estate industry, providing comprehensive solutions and risk-adjusted returns, among many other things. It has a portfolio of funded assets exceeding rupees 400 crores and counting, and also servicing over 500 clients. Welcome to Unusual Suspects, Chirag. Delighted to have you on the show.
Thanks, Gaurav. It's a privilege to be here, especially at a time when Indian real estate is going through such a defining transformation.
Yes, absolutely. Chirag, and that's a good segue actually to start this conversation. Let's start with a broad overview of the Indian real estate sector. What's your assessment of the current state of the market? Because you both have a ringside view as well as also a 30,000 feet bird's eye view. And you also have a 360-degree view. How do you think it has evolved over the past few years?
So, Gaurav, I believe we're standing at a significant inflection point in Indian real estate, one that has been a decade in the making. Over the last 7-10 years, we've seen the sector undergo a regulatory detox, as I say it. RERA, IBC, GST, SEBI, fund governance frameworks, they have collectively created what I call a macro legitimacy. Let me put it in simple terms. The sector has moved on from being opaque, relationship-driven, and structurally informal to one that is legally enforceable. Consumer rights have been strengthened. Capital flow regulations have a more institutional space and spine. So the macro legitimacy phase was going on. But now what I feel is this isn't the finish line. It's just starting gate for new things to emerge. What I feel right now is that it is paving way to the micro integrity, the new frontier, as we call it, in the real estate market. It refers to what actually happens inside the boundary of a project. Let me make you clearly understand what micro integrity means when I call it the new frontier. So it's like saying that the developers now have to give out better governance framework. Capital integrity systems have to be brought in, from title to promoter alignment to milestone link at project level, to make the entire system much more enforceable, transparent. That's where the trust will be tested in reality, Gaurav. That's where I see going in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, also, I personally feel there are 5 structural shifts that are happening in the entire real estate industry. And, when I speak about real estate industry, I'm coming from an investment background. So I talk from that angle. So what I see that there are 5 structural changes that are happening is one is the capital stack evolution is happening. What do I mean by capital stack? So there is debt, equity, preferred, mezzanine in balance sheets for developer. Now it's not just about debt instruments that were just simply playing. Now it's about layered risk, which is coming in, and everything is going to be priced in the structure, which we call it as risk geometry. There is urban core reconfigurations is happening. Land scarcity will further push redevelopment in tier 1 city. But only, execution backed, governance aligned platforms will survive this lot. What we see in the next 5, 10 years. Those who are mid market and not aligned to this particular idea will not be surviving. What is that is what we feel in the next 5, 10 years. There is a lot of distribution disruption is coming. Also, one of the structural shifts that is happening. Developers were earlier making what is suitable for the land. You know, uh, for 2 BHK, 3 BHK, the core thought was that I need to consume all the FSI. I need to make the most of it. Now it's changing. It's becoming more consumer aligned. Also, a lot of platforms like Guardians, like Justo, like Homesify, and others are coming in. They're transforming the way homes are sold. They're using analytics and trust first customer journeys to close the loop. This is a great thing that is happening for the market. Another structural change that I see is the creation of platform of capital. One of the news that you've seen in the last month was that HDFC has created a platform with with a developer called Eldeco. Now, this is not the first time it's happening. This will happen, I think, at a rapid progress in the next 5, 10 years, because as the micro integrity, as I call it, in the developers start developing, this is a natural choice for the capital to go to create platforms with other developers. As we speak right now, Arbor is looking at creating some platforms with some developers. And there is, from a financial institution point of view, people like us who are fund managers or platforms, there is one structural shift that is coming is risk engineering as alpha. Earlier, what used to happen is risk will be codified, priced, and monetized. What earlier we used to do is we used to avoid the risk. Now we have to govern the risk. And all these things, 5 things, translate into a structural shift as well as a great positive side for the Indian real estate sector.
Yeah, Chirag, it's good that you actually laid out some of the key trends or the shifts as you see shaping the Indian real estate landscape. You talked about investment, and you come from a serious investor background and investment background. And can you walk us through your investment, Arbor's investment process, and how do you identify and evaluate potential investment opportunities?
So, Gaurav, we operate through a proprietary 5 stage investment lifecycle called Astra, Arbor Strategic and Tactical Risk Architecture, where we divided the entire flow of deal to evaluate the risk in 5 stages, that is, origination, underwriting, structuring, monitoring, and risk. At every stage, there are parameters. For example, let me take you through a journey. Suppose a developer has come to us for a project of his in maybe Bombay, where he needs about 100 crore rupees of funding for private credit. In the origination stage, we would check in certain parameters like the title, like the entitlements. Entitlements are called approvals in layman's language, but in and the financial terminology, they are called entitlements and regulatory risk. And further credit scoring of the promoter and and credit research of the promoters, as well as title research and market study. A deep market study would happen at the origination stage, but this would happen at the base level. Now, once we have checked about 50, 70 parameters, then it goes to the underwriting stage where it becomes a far comprehensive analysis where the title, the market, the configurations, the developer governance, everything is gone goes through a 200 parameter check. And that's when we have already developed a risk manual wherein certain pointers are highlighted. Like for example, from a title aspect, we don't go if the title is not traceable. We don't know the origin of the title, so we don't go ahead. For us, title is the key. If we don't have clarity on approvals, we don't go ahead. If a developer has past delays, bad history, we don't go ahead. So the certain parameters have been built in, and then it goes to in the underwriting stage. We do a deep dwell, and then we come to the structuring change when all these risks that we have identified is now translated into the paperwork, where it's actually going to be disbursed, and this reflect into capital stack, milestone linked, escrow locks, security packages, enforceability, waterfalls, etc., etc. And then the disbursement happens, goes through the monitoring where we've developed AIMS, which we call Arbor Investment and Monitoring System. It's the entire spine of Arbor. It's a technology system where we can do live monitoring of the investments we've made. Through that platform, we monitor the transactions on a daily basis, give corrections out, send out the legal pointers, we operate through that and monitor it very closely. And then the final is the exit where either the developer buys us back or refinances it, or even if there's a monetization of the SPV. But the essence is, if these five things are not located by us, the entire life cycle, all the risks are not located by us, we really don't go ahead at the start. So, for example, when a developer comes, I need to know my exit at the start. Otherwise, there's no point doing an underwriting at any stage. So this is a very detailed thing that we mapped out. We call it Astra. We've developed risk manuals, we've developed policy statements, and multiple SOPs to ensure risk. At Arbor, we believe the risk has to be mitigated continuously and has to be monitored continuously. That's where we are, Gaurav.
Chirag, as a co-investment firm, Arbour Investment works closely with real estate developers to identify investment opportunities. You did mention about creating platforms now. Can you tell us more about your approach to partnering with developers, and how do you ensure that their needs are aligned with those of your investors, Chirag?
Absolutely. So, in partners, we primarily look for something. One thing that is a must in every partner of ours is that they should just not be sharing upside. They should be protecting our downside. If that alignment is there, then only we think of becoming partners. Now, that alignment over the period of last 3 years of operation and over the last 15, 20 years of our experience, if we have identified about some developers which are great and have shown consistent deliveries, track record, performance, and alignment. And when these parameters come in together is when you try and go for a platform creation, because only when the promoter or the developer in that case who is aligned with you totally is where the investors are safe. Of course, alignment is one thing, but that leads to another part. That is the risk evaluation. As I told you in the earlier part, that the five-stage risk evaluation has to be there. Further, there has to be equity sharing. There has to be structure put in place, like waterfalls, promotes, where our capital comes out first. We have a higher charge on the cash flows. And all these things come together is when a investor start feeling safe. And investors also start feeling safe when a company approaches this very systematically. At Arbor, we approach this very systematically, and that's why we have now the confidence of the investors to go ahead and start creating platforms.
Chirag, Arbor is also currently, it functions currently as a co-investment firm, but you do have plans to obtain SEBI authorized Cat 2 investment, AIF, alternate investment fund, isn't it? Can you tell us more about your plans for growth particularly in this aspect?
Absolutely. So, want to take you back to the journey in 2021 when Arbor was formed. We had two choices: to form an AIF immediately and to go with the co-investment model route. Now, over to the audience, some may be aspiring entrepreneurs and emerging fund managers. I want to share. See, we were three founders who formed this company. Myself, Tejas, and Priyesh all comes from a rich investment and real estate experience. Have a network of investors with them. When we formed this, we realized that the transitions have come in. The market has now shifted from, as I told you earlier, that the macro legitimacy has now come in. Of course, it's moving towards the micro integrity part, and now AIS will be the cornerstone of investments in real estate, because RBI also cracked down on this NBFCs and bank after the INFS fiasco. That is when they stopped capital flow or supply of capital to the real estate industry, or affected it drastically. So when we decided to form this company, we had a choice, either to take equity capital from very large players and burn a lot of capital to form an AIF, because initially AIFs are formed, they are high entry barriers, and you need a lot of experience, capital, and holding power to sustain the entire business of AIF. We decided on the counter side, let's go with the co-investment route. Let's build our track record, because even if Chirag has a track record, or Tejas has a track record, or Priyesh has a track record, as a company, we don't have a track record. Let's build our track record. And we had the support of our investors. We went ahead, we finished about 19, 20 transactions. Now we are at 500-600 crore rupees funded assets. And now the time of transition has come in, that we've created a pool of investors. We've created a track record of investments, right from multiple strategies, private credit to private equity to, you know, doing platform equity, and exited about half of them with investors IRR, promised IRRs. Now it's time when we are very confident that we will have the investor base support. And now we are moving towards a Cat 2 AIF. Now, the Cat 2 AIF is a very important junction in our life of Arbor, because that's when we are going to unfold the actual story of Arbor. This is where we are targeting to get a unique AIF, which is a development management layered investment platform with trust layer, which is test returns, which we have already signed. So this is what we are trying to build over this next 5 years. And I believe the journey is very exciting. It's going to be very exciting. It already looks very exciting.
Chirag, also one question on the way you navigate the regulatory architecture and the landscape in India, because you operate in real estate and Arbour Investments, by the nature of the industry and the sector, you have to navigate a very complex and rapidly changing regulatory landscape. How do you stay ahead, or even if you are not staying ahead, how do you actually keep pace with the regulatory developments? Particularly in the context of RERA and GST and other aspects that keep on changing state by state too. How do you keep ahead or keep pace with them?
Yes. So, Gaurav, at Arbor, we don't see regulations as a checkbox or a constraint. We actually see it as an infrastructure. As the scaffolding upon which institutional real estate investing in India can actually scale with integrity. So, from the regulatory aspect, you have RERA, SEBI, IBC. The question is, how do we convert fragmented regulations into a unified operating procedures for every investment we make? And that's when we've created this manual or policy manual that we've created, which have a specific, a very last section of it focused on only on the regulatory side. That what are the procedures we have to do, what is the flow we have to follow, what are the checklists, or what are the regulations that we have to adhere to, and all those best practices have been put into the manual for the team to follow. So risk management is actually not should not be done by design. It should be done by design, not by reaction. That's what we fundamentally believe, and that's how we made the entire risk management. You deployed RAG framework or RAG risk dashboard, which we call it. That is red, amber, and green dashboard, where a lot of risk is highlighted to us initial. And all regulatory frameworks actually, focus on protection of the investors, and that protection of the investors we made our core and put it into the manual for it to be followed. Very simple. So we generally are not very fearful of regulations. We will steer it around.
Chirag, we live in a highly digitized world now, and technology and technological obsolescence, rather, the process of creative destruction is super efficient now. And we also live in the world of AI. We are entering the high noon of AI. What role do you think technology will play in shaping the future of Indian real estate sector, and how is Arbour Investments leveraging technology to enhance its investment process and, more importantly, deliver value to investors?
So, Gaurav, great question. In fact, let me tell you, share with you, last 15, 20 days, I have been spending so much time personally on all the AI frameworks as well as the agentic AI. In the last 15 days, it just blew my mind what are the possibilities of the technology in our sector. We already started to walk on this path of technology about a year and a half, 2 years back, when we, said that we don't want to depend on Excel sheets for doing our entire investments and risk analysis. We want to build a system which can be held accountable, auditable, and it can empower the entire investment team to take efficient decisions. That's when we created AIMS, the Asset Arbour Investment and Monitoring System. That was going good. From the life cycle, we have already mapped in the exit, monitoring side, and the investor side of all the life cycle stages on the platform. Now we are on the origination side. But as I started working on the agentic AI for the last 15, 20 days and the AI, it just blew my mind of what are the possibilities. Let me take you through some possibilities. Now, agentic AI system, in fact, now we've started building on it, where if I have a manual which can identify all the risk and which is trained, the title diligence of a project, which is a very cumbersome process. It takes about 30, 40 days, a huge man hours to finish and still prone to errors. That can be done in 5 minutes. You will get about, see, I believe in using Pareto's principle that you can't cut down the human at all. But 80/20, this will throw out the 80% risk items to use to make you understand what are the title. So now we're building up a system where, the developers can give us the data, the agentic AI framework can actually process it because we've already identified the risk taxonomy of more than 4,000 risks in subsegments. Now it can start training the module and it can start giving us data immediately in the whatever format we wanted and whatever risk framework which you are using. This is great. This is like empowering the entire investments industry. The entire investment industry was railing down using old age Excel systems. Even the top funds still today use Excel sheets, which is not a great start for doing multi-billion dollar assets, right? Multi-billion dollar investments. So at Arbor, we are highly focused on technology. In fact, we think technology is our spine, and we'll be doubling down on technology every year because as we have to keep up the pace with the rapid technology which is evolving. As we speak, every 1 week the technology is getting evolved because the agentic AI and other systems which are coming, the revolutions that is going on.
Chirag, finally, you've made a significant investment in Justo Real FinTech. It's a PropTech company and that primarily operates in the mid-ticket size property segment. Can you tell us more about what drove this investment? What was the rationale for this investment decision? Was there a key determinant that that drove this investment decisions? And how do you see Justo fitting into Arbour Investments' broader strategy?
So, Gaurav, we look at so Justo is primarily a distribution company. So it acts as an exclusive agent for developers to market their projects. That's simply put it. Now, for us, we look Justo from a risk insurance angle. Let me take you from a journey. From once the investment is made, one of the highest risk in any development project is the sales risk, apart from construction risk and other risk. Now, sales is what we wanted to loop in via integrating our systems as well as having a on-ground team who would be who is expert in distribution, who has done more than 10,000 homes have been already sold by them. That's when we identified Justo. We analyzed it, we checked the entire cultural fit, the promoters, and we got in great touch. That's when we acquired a significant stake in Justo. And it's more like a risk insurance. So it's like distribution as a risk insurance for Arbor. Now, in the entire moat, it fills up, it gives us the market access. It develops more trust. Arbor has more boots on ground. And at the end, we want to be a more trustworthy company. Having a huge distribution hub helps us in our enforcement in any assets which have gone wrong. It's like, so we are at Arbor, we are a capital to consumer platform. We're not a real estate investment company, but a capital to consumer platform. And it helps us close our loop of going to consumers.
Absolutely. Chirag, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and sharing your deep insights and taking the time out and dropping by to have this conversation with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gaurav, for giving us the opportunity.